Hi, I'm Nancy with Brush and Sketch, and today I'm going to show you a couple watercolor techniques that are very helpful and they're for the beginner. If you're just starting out with watercolor, this is a great way to take your paintings to the next level. So, the first thing I've got here is a piece of watercolor paper, and I'm going to tape it to this board. Now, I do that because watercolor paper, and really any paper, as you get it wet, it will curl up and it becomes difficult to handle. So right now, I'm just taping the edges. Sometimes when I'm doing a painting, I'll tape it all the way around. This is just regular masking tape. Now, watercolor paper is different, it's special. I don't know if you've ever gotten copier paper wet, but it kind of just turns to mush and gets holes in it very easily. But watercolor paper is specially made so it won't do that, and it's very durable, and it's made so that the water and the pigment will sit on the top of the paper and you can mix the colors together and very slowly just sometimes it'll absorb just a little bit or dries right on the top. So very good. What I'm using today is a 140-pound weight. It also comes in 90-pound and other varieties. And for practice, I really like just your regular art store brand like Hobby Lobby or Michael's usually has a store brand um, that works really well when you're just learning techniques and practicing. Brushes, you want to make sure you have a soft brush. Do not use a brush that you've used with acrylic paint because acrylic stays in the bristles and will ruin a brush over time and makes them quite coarse. This is a brush that I just got out of a pack at Hobby Lobby. It's one of my favorites. I've got some other ones too I really enjoy. The size of the brush really doesn't matter for this exercise. Of course, if you're painting something bigger, you're going to want a bigger brush. I like the round barrel when I'm using watercolor. And when I talk about the barrel, I'm talking about this metal part. A round barrel is a brush that is not crimped. Sometimes you get a crimped one. It holds water in there for you. And part of watercolor, a big part of watercolor, is managing the ratio of water to pigment. And you need a lot of water. That's why it's called watercolor. And of course, that's something that with practice gets easier and easier and that you'll get better at over time. So let's start by getting some water. And I'm going to put it right here on my palette. And I'm going to use blue today, an ultramarine blue. And I'm going to make a pool or a puddle of color just by adding lots of water and getting a nice pool. Now I'm using M. Graham watercolors. When I start my students, I usually start them with Winsor Newton Cotman, which is a student grade watercolor paint. Wonderful for practicing and learning and creating beautiful works of art. So, definitely recommend those. But whatever you've got, I mean, if you've got a tray of Crayolas, go for it because those work really well too. We're going to start with what we call a flat wash. Now, a flat wash is when you want to get a consistent color all the way down. If you're painting a sky, or I just want something that's as perfectly blue as possible with no variation. And so I'm going to start by tipping my board with the paper slightly. I want to use gravity for this. And you'll notice I have a little tabletop easel right here. Sometimes when I'm painting in watercolor, I just kind of put it up to there to give me that slant. If you have a draft table that has that slant already, wonderful. But you can control the slant when it's on a board just by moving it back and forth with your hand. So I'm going to start at the top, and I want to make sure I have enough water so that I get this bead of pigment and water along the bottom of my brush stroke. That bead is very important because keeping a nice wet bead is what's going to help us have a streak-free wash all the way down. Basically, what we're doing is we're just pulling that bead down the paper. Now, when the bead gets smaller and starts disappearing, I dip my brush again into my pool that I made, and I'm just coming down like that. And see how nice and flat that is? I've got a nice consistent blue all the way down my paper. And that's what I'm going for there. That's how you can get watercolor with very little streaks, by keeping that bead going. Now it's tricky to do. I know I make it look very easy, but the more you practice, the better you'll get. Now, when you're done, you can take your brush, tap it on your paper towel, and maybe pull a little bit of that bead out to smooth it out and keep your color consistent. But pretty much we've got a very nice flat wash right there. Now, the next one I want to show you is called a graded wash. Now, a graded wash is where we start dark at the top and we get lighter and lighter and lighter as we go down until it disappears. So for this one, I'm going to start again with my pool, my nice pool of blue. And same way as last time, I'm going to start with that bead. I didn't get much in there, so I'm going to add a little bit more. See that nice bead that I've got going on? Now, this time, instead of dipping back in my pool, I'm going to dip directly in the water. And I'm going to bring that bead down, but with just water, not with pigment. And I'm going to keep doing that as I come down a little farther with the water. Now I have a bead there, but it's very light because it's starting to disappear because the water is becoming a higher ratio than the pigment. And look at how it just kind of disappears into nothing. So practice this over and over again. These washes are a great way to paint sky or any sort of background in your watercolor paintings. I'd love to see what you come up with. And remember, practice makes perfect. Talk to you again.